need news in the morning, weather, and traffic.
Local news, trending talk, Rob and Bernie on Acadiana's Morning News.
Lying in my bed, I hear the clock.
7:14 now at Acadiana's Morning News, and we continue to follow the developments. Now we know all the victims' names, and we are hearing stories of hero teachers who really went out in front to protect their students. 3 of them lost their lives. One was a football coach, 2 others. One was a history teacher. I think the other was a math teacher. And their students are saying today, look, you saved our life. There's no question about it. We saw the gunman. We saw the bullets, and you took them instead of us. Caleb Morse is here from Barney's, and you hear these stories. And, you know, this whole situation, talking about active shooter training, this campus had 3,000 students on it, and they did active shooter training in the last several weeks. The one thing you can't anticipate is someone doing something so heinous as pulling the fire alarm for everyone to evacuate classrooms in order to shoot them.
Well,
how do you prepare for that?
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe they actually had a fire alarm 2 hours prior.
Okay.
That they did a fire drill. So you got to realize this is a former student, and schools don't really hide what they do to their students. Whatever your protocol is, you train your students. So if the student is the threat, they know your protocol. So he knew that the fire drill was done within a certain amount of time on a certain day, and he actually showed up about 2 hours afterwards. He didn't. I don't know. This is an opinion here, but I don't think he realized the drill had already happened. So when he pulled the alarm, I feel, and what I've gathered, is that he was hoping that they would think it was a drill. And they did. They did think it was another drill. And they came out lethargically. They came out slowly and gave him a multitude of targets.
Yeah. This specific school, like many here in Acadiana, did not have closed hallways. A lot of, we would call them breezeways here, in between classrooms and everything. Does that inherently pose a security risk?
It does, as well as I've seen very, very few true closed campuses in the Lafayette area. When I say closed campus, I'm talking fenced in and limited access.
Real fences. Not 4-foot fence.
Yeah, not a 4-foot fence. We're talking like a 6-foot fence. Now, you don't need to hide the children, make them feel like they're in a prison. That's not the goal. But you want to limit access. Limit it the best that you can. Metal detectors. More and more schools are putting metal detectors up. That's one of the things I actually do is I install metal detectors as well. We do it at Barney's, and we stay pretty busy with it. And some people are upset by metal detectors, but they're a really good visual deterrent. Now, I'll tell you right now, a metal detector doesn't stop a gun. It'll catch it, but it doesn't stop it. If someone wants to bring a firearm into your school or into your location, all a metal detector does is tell you where the gun is. It doesn't stop being the visual. It's up to you. That's up to the school. So there's a lot of things that have to come into play with that.
There, a lot always comes up anytime we have a shooting like this. This I think is the 8th one so far this year, and we're only a couple weeks into February. You talk a lot about being places, locations like church, like school, that you just don't think it could ever happen, so you don't have the awareness of what's going on. Is that something that we just need to accept as the new reality, that anywhere you could be threatened?
I mean, in nature, in life, there's no safe place. Even your home, which is your sanctuary, it happens there. So a predator always looks for a soft target, plain and simple. If you look at the penitentiary system, if you talk to prisoners, if you do a lot of your research on it, you'll realize that if they see what we call a hard target, they look for another target. They're looking for fish in a barrel. They're looking for someone staring at their phone. They're looking for people not paying attention. If you keep your head on a swivel, if you're looking around, if you're making eye contact with individuals, if you're engaging individuals, all of that shows, and good posture, all of that shows that you're aware of your surroundings. And historically speaking and statistically speaking, predators don't go after those aware of their surroundings. They're looking for the weak link. They're looking for someone who's walking around on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram. They're looking at their feet. They're not looking at their surroundings. That's what these predators are looking for. And that's what they're going to go after.
So from the business standpoint, obviously, Barney sells a ton of firearms, legally compliant.
Yes.
Background
very
checks,
much so.
yeah, as you need to. This kid had mental issues, but he was able to buy a gun legally and pass a background check last year.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see a change, or maybe from your perspective, have you ever had someone come in that even though they were going to pass a background check, they just didn't seem quite right?
So as our individual salesmen and ladies, we empower them. We empower them. If you don't feel comfortable about a sale, you can stop it right then and there. And the law gives you that ability as a FFL dealer. So if you don't feel comfortable for whatever reason, if the person's, not that you're saying they're mentally unstable, or not that you're saying that something's not right, but it's you don't feel right about it, hey, you can say, look, I'm not comfortable with this sale. I'd like to we'll stop this business right now. We'll stop this transaction. And it's happened in the past. Now, truthfully, it doesn't happen often. I think it's only happened at our store or at our locations maybe twice in over 20 years, just because of the kind of business that we do.
Mm-hmm.
Individuals who tend to do this kind of thing, they don't go to a larger or more reputable gun shop. They tend to go to, they scout the area first. They look for somewhere that they're a little more laxed, where their situational awareness isn't on par. And that's what they look for. They look for, not all pawn shops are good places, good places of business. Sometimes they go to pawn shops. Sometimes they go to gun shows. Sometimes they go to the big box stores. But they're looking for a salesman who is going to dabble in that gray area a little bit. And when you go through the background check, all it does is we call the NICS, National Instant Criminal Check Services. We call them or email them, depending on what process you use, and they tell us proceed, delayed, or denied. They don't tell us why. So if you get a proceed, hey, you can walk out with that firearm that day. It takes you as long to pay for it is all it takes. Delayed takes time, takes up to 3 business days, and denied means you can't buy the firearm. And you can appeal that. Even as a felon, where you legally aren't allowed to own that firearm, you can appeal that and get those rights back. Now, the mental state part of it, that's up to the individual doctors and those systems to put that into that system.
Yeah, because you have to actually, is the word adjudicated? Is
Yes,
it has to be determined, but
Yes.
then there's that step, like you just said, has to be turned over.
And look at it before with the Air Force with the last shooting. It didn't happen there. A systems of checks and balances is only as good as those who perform the checks and the balances.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have the right staff in place, I don't think more legislation is the answer. I really don't. We have enough laws already on the books. Some of them, in my opinion, are worthless. But there's already plenty of laws on the books. Let's enforce what we currently have. And let's empower those who are doing the front line, who are doing the sales, doing everything else.
I know you're super involved with the NRA and even local events that they have. What do you say to people who take a look at this thing, maybe from 30,000 feet or thousands of miles away, kind of what happened, and say, maybe we shouldn't be able just to buy these assault rifles or an AR? I know we've talked about the use, just the sporting need. People like to have them. From that perspective, and also from why does this only happen in our country? Do you have any insight on that?
Well, look at in Japan, was it 2 years ago? There was a mass stabbing at a school. So firearms are just a tool, just like anything else. The question, I do get posed a question on why buy a high-capacity magazine. An AR, which is a 5.56 by 4.5 or 223 caliber, it's a small caliber. It's a little bit bigger than a 22. It's not a very powerful caliber in actuality. It really isn't. 308 has more knockdown power, does more damage. There are plenty of other calibers out there, Wildcats and modern, that do a much more tremendous damage to the body or to a target, we'll say. And they'll say, okay, well, let's look at the capacity, 30 rounds in a magazine. Hey, I can reload a firearm pretty quickly with the right training. It's just a tool. That's all it is. We have cars that go 200 plus miles an hour, but we're governed at 70 on the speed limit. If you choose to go over that, that's your personal decision, and you'll pay the consequences. So it's not necessarily a, hey, why have this? It's there. We can use it. Regulation isn't the final answer to everything.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. I want to come back and talk about schools and churches especially. I know that is kind of your expertise when you're talking about how to just protect yourself on the front end. I hope you bring up your idea of having someone in the parking lot, because I think that is one of the best things that I feel like I have ever heard. And maybe if there was someone walking around outside of this school, watching who was walking up to the school, maybe this wouldn't have happened either. We're joined by Caleb Morse from Barney's, as we are every Friday, and we're going to come back, wrap up with him next on Acadiana's Morning
Providing
News.
you with the best the water cooler has to offer. Acadiana's Morning News with Rob Kirkpatrick and Bernadette Lee.
726 now at News Talk 96.5. KPEL, look, what's worse than being somewhere you feel like you're safe, you feel like you know everyone, maybe like a church, but we're in a world where you may not know everyone that's going to come onto that property. Caleb, you specialize in, in kind of this active shooter training, also just situational awareness, which you talk about. If we had a count on how many times you've used that word in the months that you've been doing this show, there's no way we could tally it up. But just kind of knowing what's going on. If I'm a church or I'm maybe a private school that doesn't have a resource officer, doesn't have metal detectors, what are some things I can look at right now just to improve a little bit of safety? So
we'll go into easy things first, right? So the law actually currently affords, if you want armed individuals on your church property, first off, Catholic Diocese says no. They won't allow it currently. That may change. I don't know. But right now they say no. So Louisiana law says you can carry on church property if you have 8 additional hours of training and the church authorizes you. The law doesn't say it has to be an NRA certified instructor. It has to be a concealed carry instructor. It doesn't say anything. It's whatever the church sees fit as training. I've got a program that I worked with, that I've built and put on, and I partnered with a friend of mine who owns Cajun Karate for a hand-to-hand portion of it, because realistically, that's going to happen first before you draw that firearm. And we do that. So the law allows you to, as a concealed carry holder, if you meet that criteria, you can carry the church. You can carry on school property as well. There's already a law in the books for that. But you have to have a letter from the principal of the school authorizing you to carry. So whatever that principal, whatever the school body is, it's up to them to decide to authorize that. Now, I'm waiting on current response from the concealed handgun unit from the state on, for private schools, who's the designated authority. Is it the dean? Is it a culmination as the governing body? How can we do that? And I'm also waiting on a response on what if the church is within school grounds, within a school zone. Yeah. So how that works out. But there's a lot you can do. One, situational awareness, having people, the old stranger danger thing, having students and individuals bring that up. If something doesn't seem right, bring it up. Act on it. Go tell a deacon, tell your pastor, tell your priest, tell a teacher, tell another student, tell a principal. Make it known. Even if it's nothing, if something's not right, it could be a suicidal student, someone who's not willing to hurt anyone else but themselves, and you may help save their life alone. So bring those kind of things up. For students, I've had plenty of parents ask me about body armor. And there's body armor for backpacks. They make it to where it goes in, but it's only rated for handgun calibers. Well, this guy in Florida shot a rifle. Body armor alone, soft body armor, wouldn't have stopped that. Mm-hmm. If you want to put a hard plate in your kid's backpack, you need to weigh that backpack before you think about putting it in there. I mean, one of my kids are pretty big kids, and one of their backpacks is like 60 pounds if they have all their stuff. So if you're going to add another 8-pound plate in there, that's a lot of weight.
Yeah.
But you've got 60 pounds in it already. You've got layers of books. These books can stop a rifle round. So body armor isn't always the quick, easy answer that people think it is. It's not. It really. And then Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman, who is a retired Army Lieutenant Colonel, he has a company called Killology, and he's done a lot of studies on active shooters, shot placement, everything else. Well, he has a book called Assassination Generation. And in this book, it talks about the gamer mentality that people have now in these shooters. They're looking for the high score. Well, something that's very consistent in school shootings by the younger generation is headshots, because they're drilled in that from video games. And that's his study shows. So if you're wearing body armor in your backpack, how does that protect your face? Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of things that go into it. And the key is prevention, situational awareness, being that hard target, having information flow freely. Hey, if this vehicle has never been seen here before, if this backpack's sitting on the ground, we're all worried about firearms and everything else, but the first mass killing at a school in the United States was the Bath School bombing. I want to say it's almost 100 kids died, a bombing, and it was done by the CPA from the school board.
Wow.
So there are many threats, knives, bombs. I mean, the list goes on and on.
A car? Look, outside playgrounds.
Oh, yeah. It wouldn't take much for a vehicle to drive through a fence even and hit somebody and hurt them. So there's a lot of things that are out there. Landscaping could be something that a school or a church could do. Very, very simple things.
Just so you can't see in
Right.
necessarily. If you have a parent whose, kid may be old enough to be aware of what happened in Florida, obviously the younger kids who probably aren't exposed to the news, they have no idea. School's a fun place to go. But if you do have a child who's nervous about being at school, what kind of advice would you give them?
Well, the main thing is they have to realize and have to understand that this can happen anywhere. And you're not trying to scare your kids and want them to live in a bubble. That's not what the goal is. But you need to be realistic. Hey, your chances of being in a violent encounter as a human being is roughly 500 to every 100,000. So your chances are higher of being in a violent encounter than are of winning the lottery. So you need to be able to recognize things before they happen. If an individual seems off, hey, look, if little Johnny's worried about little Blake or anything else, hey, have him bring it up to the parent. And if you're, as a parent, are concerned, talk to Blake's parents. Or I'm just using names here. I'm sorry, Blake, if I'm picking on you today.
Sorry, Blake.
But bring
Love
it
you,
up.
bud.
Yeah, bring it up. Talk about it.
Yeah.
The kid just may be having a bad day. One bad day doesn't destroy a school. We all have ups and downs.
Yeah.
But it's repeated behavior, things that just seem off that we can find out because there's establishing a baseline with situational awareness and with profiling. And there's a lot of these indicators that come up. This guy in Florida, he had a few indicators. He was called. People had realized this before, and they brought up, hey, he's made threats before.
Yep.
So you have to act on them. Information without response does nothing.
Yeah, and I think that's where a lot of people are looking. Apparently, it was an FBI field office in Jackson, Mississippi, who initially got the, complaint about his YouTube comment saying, "I'm good. I want to be a famous school shooter," or whatever. And there are a lot of questions that in the coming weeks they're going to have to answer. But it's the heat of the moment right now. Caleb, always great information. Thanks for coming by.
I appreciate it.
I know it's a tough week. I know there is a sector of people who think, only because they're scared. Okay, well, we just need to get rid of them all.
Oh yeah,
and that is an understandable knee-jerk reaction.
It's a knee-jerk. It's from the hip. It's, look, let's just get rid of all guns. And look, they tried that in Europe, and the next day crime went up 50%. The next day, because if we turn in guns, if we turn them over, theoretically now, we're talking theoretically, the only people left with them will be criminals. Because legal citizens, people who are doing the right thing, are going to want to do the right thing. If someone breaks the law, they're going to do it with a firearm, without. It doesn't matter. They're still going to break the law. So we have to find some solution. There's no easy solution. There's a lot of things at play here.
Caleb joins us every Friday from Barney's Police Supplies, 218 Fort Park Road in Lafayette. The number 337-896-3667. And you can also find them online at barneyspolicesupplies.com, along with several physical locations in our region.
Many
Taking over the world.
slowly but surely.
Thanks for coming, Caleb.